Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Shuffle music reviews and retrospectives from a gracelessly aging millennial. My name is Keaton. Thanks for tuning in. We just reviewed Social Distortion's new album, Born to Kill. And since they have an 8 album body of work that I am generally quite fond of, I thought it would be fun to do a little album ranking for this punk band that has been around from time to time with long hiatuses mixed in to their career, of course, since 1978. First album coming out in 1983. So they have been a staple of the music scene for quite some time. Of course, frontman, lead singer, lead and rhythm guitarist Mike Ness is the driving force behind the band. He is the band's only permanent member. They have, of course, undergone several lineup changes throughout the years, but a really unique band, a power punk, or I should say a hardcore punk band from Orange County, California, when they first came out, but they became famous for their cowpunk stylings, as it's called, which is a sort of infusion of American root styles like folk, like blues, like country, like rockabilly, into a sort of punk rock packaging. And it made them a pretty unique band and a pretty special band. They have been covered a lot by artists like Green Day, which makes sense, right? They're a punk band, but they're a little more melodic. I think Social Distortion is a better band than Green Day, for the record, but the fact that they have infused these classic American music styles into punk rock gave them a pretty unique sound. And Mike Ness's voice sounds old before its time, even on those early albums. And so they're just a very kind of special artist. I think all of these albums that I'm about to rank range from about 3 stars to about 4 stars. To me, they're a very consistent band. They don't have a clunker. They also never made a true masterpiece, in my opinion, but they are solidly in that 3 to 4 star range, which makes them one of the most consistent acts over the past 40 years in terms of quality of output. That makes the ranking kind of difficult, especially, when you're discerning the 6th from the 5th and the 4th from the 3rd. A lot of that has to do with subjectivity. A lot of that is just a question of taste. So it's very difficult to rank a body of work when the band was as consistent as it was. So many of these albums are so close in quality, in my judgment, but I'll do my best to rank them all for your viewing pleasure. So let's get started. Number 8, which would be my least favorite of their albums, is 2004's Sex, Love, and Rock and Roll. This album followed an 8-year hiatus during which Mike Ness released 2 solo albums in 1999. Both of those were real kind of rockabilly Americana tinged albums with a lot of cover songs on them. And of course, founding guitarist and childhood friend of Mike Ness, Dennis Donnell, passed away suddenly from a brain aneurysm during that break. And so for this reason, many of the songs on this album have a sort of carpe diem philosophy to them, like Reach for the Sky and Live Before You Die. Don't Take Me for Granted is a tribute to Donnell, pretty obviously, with lyrics like I'm your worn-in leather jacket, I'm the volume in your fucked up teenage band, a pack of smokes and a 6-pack, I'm the dreams you had walking down railroad tracks, you and me. Very poignant song there. Nickels and Dimes is a good, fun, rockin' tune. Angel's Wings is a pretty love song at the end. It's a really solid album. Like I say, I don't dislike it at all. To me, it's solidly 3 stars. It's just that divorced from the context, i.e., if you don't know the sort of heartbreaking impetus for a lot of these tunes and the personal story behind them, musically speaking, as just a standalone collection of songs, it's probably their most forgettable stuff. And like I said, it's not that it's bad, it just doesn't make the impression that the rest of the records do. So that would be my number 8. Number 7, I have a kind of a similar critique of, which is their 1988 album called Prison Bound. This is their sophomore effort, released 5 years after their debut album, Mommy's Little Monster. That, as I mentioned earlier, was just a straight-up lean, mean punk album. This album followed a 5-year break brought on by Mike Ness's drug addiction and run-ins with the law, i.e. Prison Bound. And this album is widely seen as a major installment of the American cowpunk genre. This style of punk rock would arguably have more influence on the country scene than the rock scene, because this kind of music really carved out a space for the alt country movement in the 90s with artists like Uncle Tupelo slash Wilco. One led to the other, of course. Lucinda Williams, Sun Volt, Steve Earle, Whiskey Town, Drive-By Truckers, etc. This is no doubt a transitional record. Sounds a little rough around the edges. Definitely a good album, but definitely an example of the band kind of finding its footing. Like Sex, Love, and Rock and Roll, the most compelling thing about this album to me is the context, or the backdrop, if you will. You know, Ness was only 26 years old in 1988, but he had already lived a life. He started a successful band, he had a successful debut album, then got into drugs and petty crime, did some time, got out, put the band back together. That's a lot of life experience for a 26-year-old. And that world weariness kind of comes through here. He's an old soul making a young man's music. It's the Law, track 1. We're sitting here in this cell. You know it's like a living hell. Was what you did really a crime? The judge says you have to serve time. Prison Bound, the title track, is good. There's some good tunes on here. But again, when the backstory is kind of more memorable than the music, that means the music isn't particularly memorable. It's not bad. Again, I'd rate it an easy 3 stars. I think it is interesting, especially when you know the story of the band and the story behind it. And it was definitely an influential album, just not as strong as when they would really hit their stride, which was very shortly after the release of this one. My number 6, moving on down the list, is the aforementioned debut in 1983, Mommy's Little Monster. 9 songs, 27 minutes, recorded in one night, Christmas Eve, at the Casbah Studio in Fullerton, California. Mommy's Little Monster is where it all started for this band. There's no Americana, rockabilly, blues, none of that. This is just a no-nonsense California hardcore punk album. It's raw, it's real, it's brash, it's loud. But even as a 20-year-old, Mike Ness's knack for melodic songwriting, sophisticated lyrics, and really solid lead guitar playing comes through here. It's definitely a strong effort for what it is. The Creeps is great. The title track is great. The last song, Moral Threat, I like a lot. I find these DIY debut albums pretty charming when they're done well. I actually like the Green Day debut for that reason, which was recorded in about 5 days. Especially in the punk genre, there's just something really kind of quaint about these live-sounding sort of rough DIY type of albums, especially when you can pick out the talent on display. And that's the case here. So I really do enjoy this album. It's fast, it's loud, it's angsty, but it's also melodic and fun. And so it's very accessible. I dig it. That's one thing that I think really enhances punk music, is when behind all the noise and the angst and the anger, there is a sense of melody. And Mike Ness has always had a great knack for melodic songwriting. And that comes through here on the debut. It's short, recorded in one night to save money, of course, but it's really cool for what it is. I dig that one quite a bit. All right, moving down on the list to number 5, we have 2011's Hard Times and Nursery Rhymes. Now, this is less a punk rock record and more a straightforward rock and roll album, which is ironic because it's their first record on the legendary punk label Epitaph, which hosted big punk artists like The Offspring, NoFX, Rancid, and of course Bad Religion, whose guitarist founded the label. Now, the lack of punk stylings is why a lot of people didn't particularly care for it, but I think the music is really good. It's got a real swagger and confidence, lots of Springsteen and Rolling Stones influence to be heard here. California is a great song, one of many on here where you get some nice female backing vocals, which was new for the band. That sounds very Stones-esque right there. You get nice pedal steel on the 6.5-minute Bakersfield, a country rock ballad, the longest track in the Social Distortion catalog. Piano and keyboards appear for the first time in Social Distortion history on this album. I particularly love the rollicking Can't Take It With You. Great up-tempo blues rocker, great keys, great backing vocals, nice guitar solo in that song as well. I also like their cover of the Hank Williams classic Alone and Forsaken very much. That to me is a highlight. That's one of my favorite Hank Williams tunes, which is saying a lot because Hank Williams is one of the best songwriters of all time. Of course, Mike Ness has peppered cover songs throughout many of his albums. His solo albums contain a lot of them as well. but this is a dark and stormy cover of a really dark and bleak song. But I love it. I find this album really enjoyable. There's maturity in the writing, in the playing. It's self-produced, which means it makes sense that this would be their longest album and perhaps their least disciplined. But it's not totally self-indulgent. I feel like it respects the listener and rewards the listener with 55 minutes of really quality music. Now, this is another example of where it's really hard to rank these albums side by side. So this one here, Hard Times and Nursery Rhymes, more a straightforward rock album. If that's more your thing, you would likely rank that above Mommy's Little Monster, which is more just a straightforward punk album. I personally tend to prefer rock and roll to punk music, and so I'll rank this a little bit ahead of their debut for that reason, but that's totally a subjective thing. This we're probably getting into, for me, what is about 3.5-star territory for Hard Times and Nursery Rhymes. Number 4. All right, now we're getting into 4-star territory, of course, which was my rating for their new album, Born to Kill, which is my number 4. I dropped a full review of this on the channel, so I won't drone on about it too long now, except to say I really dig it. I think it's a great comeback album after a 15-year hiatus and a battle with cancer. Mike's voice sounds great here, both as a vocalist and a guitarist. I love the guitar sounds on this album. I love the gritty wisdom of the vocal performance and the songwriting. I like the fierce opening title track as symbolized by the album cover art, Born to Kill. The Way Things Were, really melodic, melancholy, bittersweet song. You get a lovely barroom duet with the great Lucinda Williams on Crazy Dreamer. You get another great cover song here in Wicked Game, really cool take on the iconic Chris Isaak hit. And Over You is a great tribute to the music scene of years gone by. Those are the standout tracks to me on this album. Not every track is a banger. It's not one of their more consistent albums, but there are no skips. I mean, it's all pretty solid with some really cool highlights. So to me, this is easily 4-star territory. I love it. I think it's everything you could want and more from a band getting up in age and returning from an extended break. So I'm a big fan of their new album, Born to Kill, and hence it is my number 4 pick. Now, this is probably their best album since 1996's White Light, White Heat, White Trash, which is my number 3 on the list. The title is, of course, a play on the classic Velvet Underground record, White Light, White Heat. This one strips away a lot of the roots music stylings of their previous 3 albums, and instead, this one feels like a more mature, polished, and produced version of their 1983 debut, Mommy's Little Monster. It's a punk rock version of an alternative rock record, which was, of course, the sound of the day in the mid-90s, as grunge had essentially given way to the alternative rock scene, so much so that alternative wasn't so alternative anymore. It had basically penetrated the mainstream, and this definitely fits in with the times in that way. Punk drummer Chuck Biscuits, who played with Danzig and Black Flag, joins the band for this album, a fitting personnel choice given that the sort of Americana swing here is substituted for driving aggressive punk rhythms, and so it sounds really great. Of course, Ness brings that maturity, that wisdom as a songwriter to this sound, with introspective self-criticism abound in tracks like I Was Wrong, Through These Eyes, When the Angels Sing, which is an emotional tribute to his grandmother, while Down Here with the Rest of Us is an anthemic tribute to the plight of the working class. And so there's the tenacity here of a defiant, youthful spirit in the music, but of course an old, wise sort of world weariness spun through the themes of many of the songs, as are all the albums on this list. This is really close to the album ranked above it. It's a super solid, consistent genre record. The only blemish on it, though, I have to say, and it gives me no pleasure to say this, but I don't think the cover of Under My Thumb really works. It starts out, you hear the chords of the song over this sort of mid-tempo rock beat, and you figure, okay, it's kind of cool. But then it goes into this kind of loose, jangly, double-time punk rhythm for the main verse of the song, and to me, it just kind of misses the mark. It's actually probably my least favorite cover in the Social Distortion catalog, which is probably why I rank it number 3 instead of number 2, When you get this high in the rankings, little things like that can matter a lot in terms of where an album finally fits in your countdown. But the rest of the album is super strong, super consistent, well written, well performed, performed with a lot of conviction, a lot of attitude. And so, once again, in 3.5 to 4 star territory here, for sure. Probably a 4 star album. White Light, White Heat, White Trash. Dig this one quite a bit. Now, number 2 is another genre heavy album, which subjectively, I gotta say, I just like a little bit more, which is Somewhere Between Heaven and Hell. This was released in 1992. This was, of course, the follow-up to their breakout hit album, the self-titled album from 1990. This was also their third consecutive album with the same lineup, which was Mike Ness, Dennis Donnell, John Maurer, and Christopher Reese. And it shows. The band sounds really tight here. And on this album, as the cover art suggests, they lean very hard into the rockabilly, blues, and country styles. Lots of really good songs on here. Cold Feelings is good. Bad Luck was the big single off of this album, hit number 2 on the modern rock charts. I love it. It's one of the best singles in the band's oeuvre. Really dig that song. Produced by Dave Jordan, who worked with some of the biggest alternative rock acts of that time, like Jane's Addiction, like Alice in Chains. The guitars here are thick and grungy, but the songs are very much influenced by American roots music. Making Believe and King of Fools are 2 country covers on here. 99 to Life and This Time Darlin' are originals that sound like old-time country tunes with modern rock makeovers. I think the record gets a bit tedious towards the end, since it really sticks to the same stylistic kind of juxtaposition I was just talking about of roots rock played in a sort of alt-rock punk style. But the songs are, for the most part, pretty catchy, good lyrics, good melodies, tight playing, a great single, a really strong effort, and a great follow-up to a big hit that kept them relevant and on the scene. Like White Light, White Heat, White Trash, it kind of sticks in a certain pocket, doesn't stray too far from the concept, which is roots music with a punk rock makeover. White Light, White Heat was, of course, a straightforward punk album. What they are most known for is a blending of those two styles, which is why my number 1 kind of has to be the self-titled Social Distortion from 1990. This was their third album. This was their major label debut for Epic Records. It's a really great distillation of who they are as a band. You've got a good deal of punk rock vibes here in the opening tracks, like So Far Away and Let It Be Me. But then you've got the 2 big hits here, both charted. Story of My Life, which was featured in the 2005 buddy comedy, if you will. Well, it's not really a buddy comedy, but anyway. Orange County. Tribute, obviously, to Mike Ness being from Orange County. They used that song in that film. That song was everywhere. It's a big hit. And, of course, Ball and Chain, which I think is really the definitive Social Distortion anthem. Kind of a punk rock version of Wagon Wheel, if you will. A honky-tonk sing-along with electric rock and roll attitude. That is kind of the quintessential Social Distortion track, I think. Then you have the band's most famous cover song here, Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash. Not their best, in my opinion. I think either Wicked Game or Alone and Forsaken are probably their strongest. But again, this really sums up what the band is about. If you want someone to check this band out and give them an idea of what they're in for if they explore the catalog, this is the perfect sort of starter album. And that cover is a classic for obvious reasons. And, you know, don't forget, while this album wasn't their first to lean heavily into country and rockabilly and blues, this being their first album on a big label meant this was kind of their introduction to the mainstream music world. And so to have this great sampling of styles, punk, rock, and country, really established Social Distortion as both a rock band that belonged in the 90s music scene and also a band that was its own unique thing. The album kind of does 2 things at once. It blends in and it stands out at the same time. And that, to me, is why this ranks number 1. Between Heaven and Hell and White Light, White Heat are both really strong, but they each kind of focus strictly on just one element of the band's strengths, whereas here, you really get a taste of everything they're about. Not only does this make the album a great intro to the band, as I mentioned, but also as a song list straight through, it's the most entertaining because the variety of styles kind of keeps everything fresh and exciting. It doesn't wear out its welcome at all. So for these reasons, I would have to say their self-titled album from 1990 is their best, and revisiting it and talking about it, I probably whiffed on my 1990 countdown. This probably belongs somewhere in the runners-up list. I don't know if it's top five. Top five is really hard, folks. Like I said, here's an album that I like quite a bit that was not in the top five. But I probably should have given this an honorable mention shout out because it is quite good. Easily a 4-star album, kind of a classic in its own right. And so there you have it, folks. That is my ranking of the Social Distortion catalog. Just to recap and recount, my number 8 pick is 2004's Sex, Love, and Rock and Roll. My number 7 is 1988's Prison Bound, their sophomore effort. My number 6 is Mommy's Little Helper, their raucous punk rock 1983 debut. Hard Times and Nursery Rhymes from 2011 is my number 5. The new one, Born to Kill, is my number 4. White Light, White Heat, White Trash from 1996 is my number 3. Number 2 is 1992, Somewhere Between Heaven and Hell. And number 1, of course, the self-titled album from 1990, Social Distortion. Hope you enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed kind of revisiting some of these albums. I had been familiar with most of them. The only one I had not heard at all going into this countdown was Sex, Love, and Rock and Roll, actually. So perhaps there's a little bias there since that was the first time I heard it. I haven't, that one hasn't marinated a while. Sometimes albums grow on you over time. But besides that, I had heard all of these. I had revisited some of these in anticipation of this list, and glad I did. It's a really fun band. It's a really fun band. So check them out. Social Distortion. There's my countdown. Let me know what I got right in the comments below. Let me know what I got wrong in the comments below. I know you will. Give me your list if you're a Social Distortion fan, and be on the lookout for more stuff this week. Paul McCartney's got a new album coming out on Friday, so I'm going to have a week of McCartney material coming up. We'll review the new one. I'll also rank the Wings catalog. I also got a little special piece I'm putting together on his debut solo album from 1970, which I think will be pretty fun. So stay tuned. Smash that subscribe button. Smash that like button, please. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.